welcome to Extreme Network's Executive Roundtable. My name is Cristina Tate. I'm the Senior Vice President of Financial Planning and Analysis here at Extreme. And I am also chair of the Women in Networking Alliance, or the WIN Alliance, which is Extreme's employee resource group for women. We have been celebrating Women's History Month all month long, and I'm very honored and excited to welcome our panel of leaders here. First, we have Kumar, who is our Chief Marketing Officer, Katy Motiey, who is our Chief Legal, Administrative, and Sustainability Officer, and Kimberley Basnight, who is our Senior Vice President of Talent and our Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer. The United Nations Women theme for Women's History Month this year is Invest in Women, Accelerate Progress. In order to achieve gender equality, we must invest in women to address such global issues as human rights and poverty. From a business perspective, we must invest in women to unleash and unlock the potential of half of the workforce and achieve better outcomes. Much progress has been made, but we need to make more progress. And so first, I'd like to start, Monica, with you and ask, what progress have you seen in the course of your career?
Yeah, thank you, Cristina, and I'm really happy to be here. For me, it's really about looking at all the incredible women and the allies who've paved the path for us to be where we are today, and we're talking about this topic, right? So as an example, I look at my mother. You mentioned about United Nations proclaiming International Women's Day. In 1975, when it first happened, my mother actually held a rally in the city that we lived in. And she was the only female professor in an all-boys college. So when I think about of anecdotes and in terms of the progress I'm seeing, I'm starting back then. And then I look at our generation and what we've done in terms of continuing to persevere and not giving up in making sure that girls and women have equal opportunities as everybody else in the workplace and in our lives and societies. And then I look at my daughter, who's the next generation forward, and I look at her and go, yes, they are still fighting for, again, equality in their own way. She's more introverted, more, I would say, a quiet kind of person, but she has that quiet confidence in making sure she's looking for her place and equality in society. So I know that this is an ongoing journey that we are on, and I'm excited to be part of it.
That's great. Thanks. Kimberley, how about you? What progress have you seen?
Yeah, so when I started in tech, and by the way, I'm super young, but when I started in tech more than 30 years ago, I remember looking around the table and constantly being the only female at the table and also the only woman of color. And so I've seen that change significantly over the years. We still have lots of progress to make, but I want to say one other thing. Coming into the tech industry from a family where I was the first person to finish my college degree, I inspired my older siblings to go back to school and finish. And so coming into the context of technology and being the only one, I really struggled with imposter syndrome and not knowing the proper things to say. And so, having those mentors and sponsors for me early on in tech was like a saving grace for me and really helped me to get my footing as I was starting out, this young woman of color in a room full of men.
Wow, thank you.
I've seen a lot of progress.
That's great. Katy, can you talk about some of the differences in the workplace you see now versus when you first started?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. First of all, thanks for doing this, Cristina. This is awesome. It's great that we have us getting together to talk about these issues. There has been a lot of progress, in my opinion. So I started my career graduating law school in 1992. And having been at a number of companies, a number of 3 public companies, like Kimberley, as Kimberley said, I was the only woman in the room. So I'll just take the last 2 public companies and then I'll get to Extreme. But the only executive on the E-team, when we had a board meeting as corporate secretary, the only woman in the boardroom. at the last company I was at and at this company, at Extreme, when I started over 8 years ago, I was the only one who didn't have blue eyes. So, yeah, so the good news about Extreme is progress was starting already before I came on board. We did have a female board member, so that was the first time I had seen a female board member. And we did have executives, not at the E-team level, but we did have the senior VPs and VP females. So Extreme has been at the forefront, in my opinion, and we've made a lot of progress. So I'm excited that we're kind of on this journey together.
Great. Thanks, Katy. Kimberley, touching on the theme of investing in women, can you give an example of another leader, either a man or a woman, who has invested in you? What did that look like, and how did that help you in your career?
Well, let me go back a little bit, because I'm starting in tech, in STEM, a STEM career. I had male and female sponsors and mentors. The thing I would say, though, is that it was important for me not only to get that support, but to also execute and earn that seat that I got at the table. So I'll say that. But I had lots of support, and over the years, thinking about my early career at IBM, they were just starting to step really into diversity and inclusion. And so being able to come even into that and be a part of some of that work was really rewarding, but also eye-opening for me. I would say, and he'll probably be so embarrassed, but Ed Meyercord is an incredible sponsor and mentor for women. He's a real advocate. And, when I was looking at the theme for this year, I think Ed is a great example of someone who looks to mentor and nurture women and support them as they're, looking to grow up in the company. And I think there are many Eds at Extreme Networks. And I think that although we know there are many, we still need many more. I think that some of the things that I've seen in my career, not to go down a rabbit trail, is that one of the most profound things that I've seen is being in a room full of men and having a man point to you in his presentation and ask you a question or ask you to respond to something that's being said in the room, or when your idea isn't being embraced by the other men in the room, having a male sponsor in that room identify you and say, hey, what do you think? I think those are the kinds of things that advocates do. And we just need more of it. And I think it's an intentional action. And the other thing I would say about it is that practice makes permanent. So the more that we do that, the more that we coach our leaders to do that, the more that we'll see that show up more profoundly in the workplace.
Those are great examples of allyship. Thank you. Monica, what about you? Can you give an example of a leader who has invested in you, and what did that look like?
Absolutely. First of all, I want to acknowledge I'm hearing a lot of onlys, right? From, all of the women here, the only, woman of color in STEM in her area, the only, lawyer in her area, and the only board member. And I can say that too. And that's not something we are proud of, right? Because we want to change that. And I think things are changing now. And we'll talk about, are they changing enough at some point? But I was also the only student in my class of I think 85 mechanical engineering students. And I think there were about 10 women in a college of, I think, 1,500 students or something. So coming from that, I knew it was very important for me to be more fierce and wanting more, what I wanted, more than my peers who were not women. And so throughout my career, I think I was just adamant in how I executed and how results-oriented I became. So I felt people didn't have a choice but to notice my work. And I'd say one story that I want to recount, this was back at Oracle many years ago. We had a senior executive join Oracle to run the cloud business. And very quickly, I think, in his first 3 months, he started figuring out who are the people that he can depend on, who's going to bring his vision to life in the company. And I happen to be one of those people. And I'm still so grateful for Sean Price to believe in me. Sean actually believed in my, in what I could do for the company and what value I could bring to the company and my talent and my skills. And he's the one who really put me on a path to senior leadership at Oracle, so much so that I eventually ran marketing for a $20 billion data management portfolio. I mean, I have so many stories, not just men, but also women. Again, I look at my mother. She has been a huge mentor and role model for me in terms of being fierce about pursuing the path of your career and not compromising between family versus career, but showing me that I can have both. I can have it both if I want to do that.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, I've had also a lot of leaders, and my mother's a huge role model for me as well. So I'm with you there. Katy, how do you invest in the women that work for you?
Well, first of all, I'm just blown away with all of the responses here. This is so awesome. I'm learning so much myself. So look, I think I'm very fair when it comes to my team, and I try not to differentiate. But that said, there are certainly responsibilities still in our environment, in our societies. Maybe it's because of my background, but I definitely think even in this country, women have more responsibilities, whether it's being a spouse with a male partner who does not contribute in the household things, being a mother. Often the women are taking on the responsibility of parents. So I try to kind of rise above and listen to my employees. And when those types of issues come up, I am more empathetic and compassionate, and I will give a little bit of room for that kind of flexibility. That said, I also have males on my team who have those types of responsibilities, but I just pay a little bit more attention. And then in addition to that, I mean, I think that Kimberley hit the nail on the head. Oftentimes, women might have imposter syndrome, and so they may not feel like their voice is heard. So if we're in a group setting, I try to be listening to that and to be mindful of that. And when it comes to promotions and so forth, I'm fair. I'm not really saying that women should be promoted over men or anything like that. But I look at, as we lawyers say, the totality of the circumstances to make my judgments. So that's kind of my contribution to investing in women.
And Katy, I observe that you're always acknowledging and recognizing what people do. And I think that's awesome.
I think it's great too.
Thank you.
Monica, what bold moves did you make along the way that may have paved the way for other women, and how did it help you?
You know, I read a quote recently, maybe a few years ago. It says something like, well-behaved women seldom make history. Now, I'm not saying that women should be disrespectful, and not behave well. But it was clear to me that I think having the confidence. So one of the things that I learned early on in my career is that if I didn't speak up, then not only am I not getting heard or listened to, but I'm also not contributing any ideas or significant ideas to the initiative that we are running, as an organization. So I'd say that's something I started very early on to kind of start speaking up. As part of that, I also started, interfacing with a lot of our women's initiatives throughout my career. And my career is like 25 plus years in tech. So every company that I've been at, I've always been part of, women's networks, and also being mentor to as many women as I can in my capacity and role. And really not even just a mentor, but also becoming their sponsors, which means if I'm working with women closely and I can vouch for their work, I would be the first one behind their back when they're not even in the room to say, hey, she's amazing. We should think about her for this cross-functional initiative or that promotion or that speaking opportunity. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is really, having, I would say that having the flexible work environment, because I think, Katy, you mentioned that often women are doing second, third shifts, right? I mean, in terms of how society is set up in many cultures, and even in many cases around us, that we end up taking on a lion's share of the housework and raising children and taking care of our parents and whatnot. And I'm again not insinuating by any means that men don't do that. Of course, men do that. But we know that, the way our society has been, women do end up taking the lion's share. So I'm a big proponent of flexible work schedules and supporting our female colleagues and male colleagues if they want to take care of personal commitments during the so-called work hours, as long as they make up for the work in the flexible schedules. I'd say those are the few things. And I'd say the last thing for me is I definitely want women to speak up, stand up. And, what's the worst that can happen if you speak up and somebody doesn't like your idea or says, well, I don't think, I disagree. Well, at least you got to speak up and you got to practice what speaking up looks like.
Great, thank you. So circling back to the theme of progress and looking to the future, Katy, I'll start with you. If we have this same discussion a year from now, what does progress look like to you?
Progress for me is to make sure that more and more people are adopting the mindset that we're talking about here. The numbers, of course, we have done an incredible job here at Extreme. To Kimberly's point, we have a huge champion in Ed, and we continue to progress. That said, in the world, most of our employees are engineers. Many of our sales employees are engineers. And in the world we live in, there are just less female engineers. So it is hard to just break this down in terms of numbers for progress, to say 50% of our employees or 60% should be women. I don't look at it that way. I look at it more from a mindset perspective to make sure that our leaders, our male leaders, are all taking on this empathetic kind of perspective that we are all talking about here, and to be mindful of how to treat women where they need more leeway, where they might need their voices heard. That to me is progress.
Great. Kimberly, how about you? What does progress look like for you a year from now?
Yeah, and I want to start with a statement that I think is important. Women are not looking for preferential treatment. What we're looking for is equal footing and equality. So we're not looking that you give us a level up, but we really want an opportunity to contribute. And so I think for me, progress looks like this. We no longer say female leader, female engineer, female salesperson, but we now say, wow, that's an incredible leader. She just happens to be a female, but that's an incredible engineer. Just happens to be a female, but it no longer matters gender or ethnicity. But hey, we've recruited some incredible talent, and they're making some incredible contributions to the organization. So where we no longer have that lens of what we look like or sound like, but really it's about the contribution that we're making.
That's very well said, Kimberly. I'm in violent agreement with you.
Thank you, Katy.
Agree.
Well, on that note, I want to thank Kimberly, Monica, and Katy for sharing your personal experiences and your candor and great advice. And I would like to thank everyone for joining and wish everyone a happy Women's History Month.
Thanks, Cristina.
Cristina.
Thank you.